Well, hi, Pete. How you doing?
I'm good. I am grateful to be back after Lane crushed it last week. I wasn't sure I was going to be invited back.
Well, Lane is, I'm sure, working his way here at the moment and would appreciate that. But it's just you and me for now, the gang of two, at least for this. Well, folks, welcome to the gang of 2/3. My name is Barry McBride. I am the web dork of the OBR. And with me is Mr. Pete Smith, the editor in charge of everything that goes on to the front page. So you can hold him responsible. He pretty much stays out of my way, so you can't blame him for the bloviation. But let's just get going with some questions from the chat room. We've got one already. This comes from our buddy Fumble13. He asks a very good question. If Sanders can keep this play up, that's sort of the the question here. Do you not draft a quarterback and get a couple stud wide receivers and no offensive linemen? What do you need to see, Pete, in order to go in that direction?
Well, I think his performance on Sunday at least started this conversation. Like, we can at least talk about this as a possibility when you throw for 364, run for 29 and 4 total touchdowns. But he needs to keep going. And the fact that they have more games allows him to keep going. You know, imagine if this was week 18, he has this and then leaves you, and that's it. That's it for the season. Fortunately, we're going to get it, hopefully, if he doesn't get hurt, 4 more data points to sort of look at and see where he can go. And if he can continue to do this, then it's going to be a more interesting conversation. But the safest thing that Shador Sanders can do is to basically win football games, to make sure the Browns can't draft a quarterback or put them in such a predicament where they're not in a good position to draft one. And then, maybe you bring in a veteran, maybe you bring something else in that sort of provides an insurance policy, so you're not going in just with Shador, but then you can do these other things. You can get the quarterback, the wide receiver, the offensive line. But if you're just saying, should I believe in Shador after one game enough to forego those options? Absolutely not. But listen, he's got my attention, which is a lot. I don't think that, for people who've been, obsessed with this idea, this is a conspiracy and everybody's against him and all that. He's still a 5th-round pick, and he still has done enough to get people's attention and to say, hey, at least let's investigate to see if he can keep this up, build on it, stack some games, and then we can talk about the future. It's going to be really difficult for me if the Browns are in position to not take another quarterback. Even if I have to live in a world, and I'd hate to have this happen, where the Browns have multiple good quarterbacks. Please don't force me into this awful situation of too many good quarterbacks, because I'll roll those dice. I'll live with it, and we'll figure it out. But at least now, let's see what he can do. Great performance. It was fantastic. The fourth quarter, the end of the fourth quarter area where he had those 2 drives, I don't think he had a single negative play. He was magnificent. So, props to him. I give him a ton of credit for what he was able to do. And let's see where he goes.
All right. I want to welcome Lane Adkins into the gang of 3. We have a quorum now for our meeting. And thanks to everyone for joining us here on YouTube, Twitch, wherever you happen to be. If you are on YouTube or Twitch, please hit us up with your comments and questions. You guys know, if you were watching OBR Weekly for the last couple of years, that I like comments and questions, and we'll put them up on the screen, and we will deal with them as they need to be done. So, Lane, Pete and I talked about this last night, and so I want to get your take on it. Those 2-point conversions at the end of the game, there are 2 questions. First question is, what's your opinion on them trying for the 2-point conversion down 14? And the second question is, what's your opinion on the play call for the second 2-point conversion? We'll see if you agree with Pete or not.
I can see the reasoning why you try the 2-point conversion on each one of the opportunities. You convert the first one, it can change the perspective on what you do on the second, gives you an opportunity to win the game on the second one. While it's not the most conventional thing that you see every head coach do, I understand why they looked at it, why they did it. I may have been more in tune to kick the extra point, but
soft.
Being said, the opportunity, it tells you that they're trying to win the game, they're trying to do things.
Yes.
Put you in a position, if they score the second touchdown, changes the complexion of what happens. You know, it's the thing that everybody thinks at the team time that they're trying to tank and they're not trying to win, not trying to do this, not trying to do that. They wouldn't even have tried what they did on the second touchdown 2-point conversion if they weren't attempting to win the game, which, needless to say, the play was there. They just didn't execute it. So I guess to answer your question, I don't have any issue, and I can see why you would make the attempts that they did.
Yeah, you see on your screen there, this is something that Pete and I looked at last night in the post game. You see what the distribution of the defense is looking like as Lavardane is crossing the paths with Quinshon Judkins. And that looks to me like if our tight end can hold his block, like he waltzes into the end zone. So the play call itself seemed like it was working, except for the fact that you trusted a couple of rookies to pull this off behind an offensive line that is pretty beat up.
You're trusting rookies.
A factor, Lane?
You're trusting rookies to do all kind of things week in and week out since this season started. It's just basic execution. Execute your responsibility, and everything else takes care of itself. It's not a rookie thing. It's not a 10-year vet thing. They just didn't execute. It's just another example of the issues that they have internally on executing play in and play out, week in and week out. It's just what it is. It wasn't a rookie thing. You had one rookie that did his job. Lavardane was doing what he was supposed to do. Judkins just, for whatever reason, went brain dead and figured out, oh shit, I was supposed to get rid of this thing.
Well,
I mean, it's just what it is.
Take a step further. Why were they in the game in the first place? Rookies. Rookies carried the game. The whole game was rookies. Shador Sanders, the last 2 drives was rookies. Him finding Dylan Sampson and Gage Lavardane and Harold Fannin, it was all rookies the entire way. So, and you know, Kevin Stefanski, to his credit, in my view, trusted Harold Fannin and Quinshon Judkins from the start of this season. And he's been saying the entire way, I trust the guys I put out there. He is true to his word. You may hate him for it, that he trusts guys that you don't think he should trust, but he's been doing it all year. And I'll make a comparison. The Raiders just put Jack Beck on the field, the 3rd-round receiver on a team that's going nowhere. They just started using him. The Browns leaned into who they are, which is rookies on the offensive side of the ball. So the last thing I want to do, especially a team that's 3-9, is to now sit there and go, I don't trust you now. They're the whole thing. I want them to get reps. I want Kevin Stefanski to coach these guys, give them the opportunity. If they're going to screw up, okay, coach them up. And to the point that was made, they don't have a whole lot to lose. In fact, by losing, you get the opportunity to say Shador Sanders played great. You get to, if you don't like Kevin Stefanski, you could say, well, they need to fire Kevin Stefanski. Whether they won or lost, you still want Ventrone gone. You're probably annoyed at the defense, but you're not going to sit here and go, the defense is bad. So the only thing that changes is 5 spots in the draft. That's how much was at stake if you won that football game. The Browns currently are projected to pick 4th. They'd be 9th if they win that football game. And look, far be it for me to hate winning, because I do think there's value in it. I think the players should experience that success, but they are 3-10 now. Like, this team probably needs to be close to the top of the draft and more than they need anything else right now, given where they're at. So you get all the things you want. Shador Sanders plays great. You can talk about that, even if you think everybody's conspiring against him and he's doing it in spite of them. You got Harold Fannin, who got over 100 yards. Right now, he's almost going to pass Tyler Warren in terms of receiving yards for the season at tight end among the rookies. He's leading the league in missed tackles forced between wide receivers and tight ends. He just passed Ozzie Newsome's record. He had the best game of his career. You got Dylan Sampson, who obviously had a crucial fumble, but had 64 receiving yards and was a critical part all of those drives. Quinshon Judkins, the 58-yard screen, didn't get much in the run game going because everybody's trying to stop them. You have all the things you would theoretically want from this game other than the W, and you get to maintain the draft position. So, look, and that's the risk. Because if Jimmy Haslam wakes up and goes, you can't lose the Tennessee Titans, that's the game. That's the sport. That's the business he chose, and he could get fired, and he has to live with those consequences. That's possible. But in terms of everything else you could possibly want from this situation, I think the Browns basically got it all.
Yeah, it can certainly be spun that way if you wanted to see progress from the rookies and, still not lose your draft position. So I guess if you have that perspective, it went very well. Raul Havana's perspective is that number 1 got the W and number 144 got the L. And I'm not sure that is entirely fair because Cam Ward started in great field position, thanks in part to our special teams, thanks in part to Shador Sanders making his big mistake of the day, the interception to Xavier Watts. And I'd argue that 144 outplayed 1 on Sunday afternoon. Do you agree, Lane?
Well, statistically, it tells you the whole story. I mean, there's no comparison. I mean, let's put it simple and just get right down to the nuts and bolts of this whole thing. Cam Ward is in a terrible position in Tennessee, and he's a lot more than what you see. There's a lot of inconsistency.
He's really good.
So we can sit there and say that number 12 outperformed number 1. Yeah, he did. Number 12 or the Cleveland Browns quarterback outperforming anybody is a big story when it comes to Cleveland. Okay, so let's cast aside all this bullshit that goes on because it's Shador Sanders or Dylan Gabriel. The thing is, it's not Gabriel versus Sanders. This is the Cleveland Browns. Shador Sanders getting his opportunity. The opportunity that he wanted to happen. It's here. And he stepped out there well prepared and played lights out. He is giving the Browns now something to think about it. Because who they thought he may be or could be, or we may see a couple years down the road, now those flashes that you've seen in camp or you see in practice or you see him spending all the time, with the mental prep, working with Musgrave, meeting with Stefanski, it's coming to light. The mentals are meeting the physicals. He at least has an idea of what he's seeing out there, and he knows how to capitalize on that. So I don't want to sit here and make this any kind of injustice to Cam Ward because he's in a shit situation. And that young man can ball.
Yeah, he's talented. He was really impressive. I was blown away by the first drive of the game. He carved him up. He absolutely carved him up. And obviously he missed a couple throws that he had wide open receivers that under pressure, he gave the Browns defense fits.
If they fix that situation in Tennessee, Cam Ward is going to be a good quarterback in this league. Same with Cleveland. They have to fix their situation for any quarterback to have a chance. You saw many flashes, a really good game yesterday that Shador Sanders played. Mistakes? Yeah. But boy, did he hit on some things, and he brings them life. Now you got 4 more games. Let's see if this pattern, this trajectory can continue. If it continues, then they have something to think about.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that the little conspiracy theories, which are sort of out there right now, is the notion that Shador Sanders was taken out for Judkins and removed from the game even when he was hot. What do you think about that take, Pete? I get the sense from your reaction, but
look, the Browns talk like it was. I actually thought this was really interesting because you got a lot of perspective after the game from players, including Shador Sanders, which his press conference was fascinating. I highly recommended watching it because he started getting really sort of taken aback by some of the questions he was being asked. And you saw him sort of react and you're like, are you kidding me? And this was one of the elements. Here's what happens. The Browns practice their 2-point plays on Friday, and they do whatever they're going to do in terms of prep. They practice this. And thanks to reporters who asked the same question multiple times, both last night and today, we know that Quinshon Judkins got reps doing this exact same play on Friday. And that Joel Bitonio revealed that the Browns had run this play against the Philadelphia Eagles all the way back in joint practices. So this is something they have done. And they found a situation where they saw the right situation and to deploy it. Not only that, they had run Wildcat earlier in the game, and the Titans sold out to stop Judkins. And Jeffrey Simmons made a hell of a play. He went through 3 people to stop Judkins, but the entire defense sold out. So the Browns sort of put that in the back of their minds and said, hey, we're in a 2-point situation. They sold out to stop Quinshon Judkins. This is the opportunity to run the play, so they ran the play. This is something they planned ahead. Shador Sanders said as much in his post-game press conference, saying, listen, we planned to do this. We practiced it. This is why we practiced it and all this other things. Now, there is another side to this. I don't buy the take Shador Sanders element out of this. You can make an argument, if you'd like, that you can say the Browns should have gone with another one of their 2-point plays that kept Shador Sanders in the game. Now, obviously, they ran one of those before in the first attempt, and they had the botched snap. So it's not as if Shador Sanders did not get a shot at running a 2-point play. He obviously had a chance and put it on himself, as he should, as the leader of the offense at this point, and said, I screwed up. I didn't handle the snap appropriately. So did that potentially inform the Browns on their second thing that, hey, we're not entirely sure that we're going to get a clean quarterback exchange, despite the fact that Shador Sanders is already accustomed to working with Luke Whippler, as he would have been had been repping with the backups for so long, Luke Whippler among them, that there should have been a comfort level in the fact that in addition to the fact they would have obviously been able to do this throughout, on the side and all these other things. But regardless, they had 2 shots at this. And what I don't want to get into, if I'm the coach of a football team or watching the coach of a football team, I do not want the coach to coach based on how he's going to be perceived. Because if he were to call a play that the Browns players did not sort of rep for this situation because it kept the hot hand in the game, and everybody said, well, they went with the hot hand. Of course they did. Then you now pissed off the players in the locker room who said, we had a play ready to go. We worked on this. Why didn't we run it? The answer cannot be because I was afraid of how it would react if I took Shador Sanders off the field. They practice it. They prepare for it. This is what real football teams do, even if you don't like the results. And I get it and this is what happened. This is the reality. When you call those plays and they don't work, you get piled on. If they run it cleanly and it works, Stefanski looks brilliant. Man, we ran the Wildcat and all these times and we set it up and we finally got this. They've been setting this play up for months. It's a shame it did not work. Stefanski took all the blame, as he should. He's not going to sit there and throw his rookie running back under the bus, especially the kid who's playing as hard as he has. But that's how these things go. That's the process of how you plan for the 2-point conversion.
Yeah. Any further thoughts, Lane?
Yeah, I think this entire topic is nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you get down to the game of football, your objective is to win, to score, etc. Okay. They had the play on. They had the play in place. They didn't execute. That's the reason why it didn't materialize. It doesn't matter who was under center. Okay. There is no guarantee that because number 12 wasn't on the field that this was going to go away. Or there's no guarantee that they're going to convert to conversion. I mean, they had previously already shown that they couldn't. But things happen. This is the game. Each play is its own separate entity. Not taking anything away from Shador Sanders. Not taking anything away from Quinshon Judkins or the play call. I thought the play call, it was a step beyond. It was coaching. They saw the opportunity. They just blew it. Okay. It's too much of this, the Browns against Shador Sanders BS that creates all this nonsense that you see with the fans, that you see in the media who can't get enough of them hearing themselves or putting themselves, injecting them into the conversation, because every their mothers today is talking about it was nonsense to run that play. If they would have executed that play and scored, what would you have heard today? What would the noise have been? It would have been crickets, other than the people that surround or want to thrive on Shador Sanders complaining that the Cleveland Browns' conspiracy of sabotaging him took him off the field so they could score another way and make him look bad. The entire situation is bullshit. It comes down to football. You play the fundamental aspects of the game, you play the win. The nonsense is the noise that you get outside the building, and that's everything that you're hearing.
Yeah.
There were certain elements that were willing to criticize them even when they scored touchdowns out of that formation. So, I mean, this is what you're feeling. Look,
it's crazy. This kid goes out there and balled out.
Yes.
I mean, balled out. He showed every characteristic and trait that people knew he had. That he was competitive, that he was hungry, that he was eager, that he had confidence, he had cockiness. He could throw the football. He has a swagger to him. He showed all of it. This is what everybody knew he had. And then you still can't get enough. You have to find something else wrong. Let the kid play 4 games and find out where he is mentally along this journey to see if he really can make them think that they don't have to take a quarterback. And he may not. He's got some interesting games coming up here. I'm eager to see it. We talked all along that you would see this kid later in the year. Yep. You've got him a little earlier than what everybody expected because of what happened to Gabriel. It wasn't a thing about wanting to keep him down behind Gabriel because Shador sucked and Gabriel was the supercomputer. It wasn't that. It was the mental aspect of being prepared more that gave one the opportunity over the other. And all the intangibles that everybody complained about all during the offseason before we got to the draft, why he wasn't drafted, he has done great work inside of that building with Billy Musgrave. And they've got it figured out. It's not every day you see your head coach meeting with your third quarterback, then your second quarterback, now your starter, like Stefanski has. So people who want to talk football and understand football and be fans, pay attention to those things. Those are the things that aren't normal. They see what opportunities there could be for them and for this young man. Enjoy that ride and let's see what he does. Because all the rest of this noise is just that. It's noise. It's nonsense.
The thing that stands out to me, though, is if they had put Shador in too early, then they'd be sabotaging him because he wasn't ready.
And actually, he would have been sabotaged because
I think
that would have been ugly. Would have been ugly.
But it also, I think, beyond the fact, I think, when you actually adjudicate this, you're going to find out that Sanders needed the time to sort of figure it out. But when you say he didn't, it undercuts the work he's been doing. You're basically ignoring how hard he's worked. Now, if you don't want to give the Browns credit, you don't want to give Stefanski credit and say, the hungry dogs and the individual meetings, I don't care. Then just put it on Sanders. Give him all the credit. After all, he's the kid who's doing the work. But I think it's easy to say, well, he could have done this all along. You watched that last preseason game. To compare that to what you just watched, it is a completely changed player. And that work should not be just discredited and go, well, he would have done this no matter what. Like, clearly we've seen him put things figured out. In fact, you watch him in the game. You watch him in the game we just watched. There are times where you can see the wheels turning and him sort of figure out what he wants to do. There were a couple times early in the game, and I was really happy to see it. He either hit checkdowns that he hasn't hit before, or he sort of almost fought his instinct to throw the ball, to then decide to throw the ball away. You are seeing him literally figure this out. And again, if you don't want to give the coaches any credit for that, despite the fact they've actually gone out of their way to give him opportunity, fine. Just pile it on him and say it's all him. But here's the thing. This is a organization. The same people are going to champion Shador now. We're mad at the Browns for drafting 2 quarterbacks and trading for Kenny Pickett and all this other crap. And they had 4 quarterbacks. How stupid are the Browns because they took 4 quarterbacks? This is why you do these things, because you took these small little chances. You didn't spend huge draft capital. If you lost, if these guys all failed, you lose a third to fifth. Okay, then you're back in the quarterback market. But right now, you've got a glimmer of hope that the kid you took the final pick of your draft, the guy everybody laughed at in terms of, oh, the owner made them do it and all this other crap when they traded up their last pick of the draft. And all of a sudden, on a draft where we're talking about Mason Graham and Carson Schwarzenegger and Hilliard Finn and Quinton Judkins, on and on and on, all of a sudden now, the 5th round pick, the guy that was just sort of an add-in, might have a shot to be the real quarterback of this team. And at that point, the fortunes of this organization, if he can sort of capitalize on this opportunity and play 4 more games of really good football, which is a big if.
Yep.
It's going to be a big if. The fortunes of this franchise are completely turned around. And we are going to stop talking about, well, they wasted a season. And all of a sudden you're going to sit there and go, oh, now if they build around this kid, now the Browns, we're talking playoffs. Overnight, on a 5th round pick, on a guy that people said, oh, this was a stupid plan. Well, they went out of their way to give this guy opportunities, both in the spring, early part of the summer. They signed a veteran that didn't need a whole lot of reps in Joe Flacco because he's been playing since George W. Bush was president. And they got Dylan Gabriel and Shador Sanders more opportunities to work and develop, and it's paying off now. You don't have to like how they got here. And again, don't give them any credit. Give it all to Shador. But that process may work out really well for the Cleveland Browns in the end. And if you want to call it luck, call it luck. So be it. You know who's not going to complain? The Cleveland Browns, because if they got a kid in the 5th round who can be their franchise quarterback, they're going to be taking it into next season and just laughing at everybody as they try to get this thing rolling again.
You know, another simple thing to think about this is that, one, I don't have time to sit here and try to bullshit you or tell you guys things that aren't true or what we don't know and what we don't see. Okay. Anybody that sits there and realistically believes that Shador Sanders was ready to come out here and start for the Cleveland Browns over 3 months ago, all right, you're already delusional and you don't know how this works. Okay, I've made my life and name on just telling shit the way it is, so now I'm going to tell you the way it is. This young man busted his ass from the 3 weeks after being drafted until he got into this position. Okay. He was not mentally prepared due to the deficiencies at the collegiate level in preparing a quarterback to play in the NFL, especially coming from the conference he did, where they play the most simplistic, vanilla, blown coverage defense in college football. Okay. This is what this young man feasted on. And he did that because he has skills. Anybody who believes that 3.5 months ago he was ready to be the starter for the Cleveland Browns just should have just done one thing that I told the masses who listen or follow us, is go back to the Colorado Bowl game last year against Brigham Young. When Brigham Young just simply changed up what they were doing on defense to looks that Shador Sanders, Colorado, Pat Shurmur, nobody had him ready for. It was an abysmal performance and embarrassment. That should have been the telltale that let's stop using the excuse that their offensive line wasn't any good. Let's stop using the excuse that they didn't run because of the offensive line. They threw the shit out of the ball all year, and when he faced adversity that he had never seen before and knew how to deal with, it was a train wreck. This is what they've worked on since he's come to Cleveland. For him to see, to recognize, to understand, have better awareness. His footwork, his arm slot. They've done all this. This is what they've worked on to get him here. And it's not just them. It's Shador Sanders as well. He's worked his ass off. And they've put a lot of time and effort into getting him to this process. You have an opportunity now to sit here 4 more weeks and see what he does when they keep putting more and more on his plate against better teams. There's going to be a telltale here. You're going to find out right away which corner he has turned. I hope he balls out and plays his ass off and shows them that he is that guy because he has the physical talent. But people got to realize that stop the bullshit with it. He should have started 3.5 months ago and we'd be in a better position. We'd be in the playoff contention. You wouldn't have been anywhere because he would have been a train wreck and this team would have been derailed. So give some credit to the people who've got him here, his staff and himself and his beliefs, because that's why he's here.
All right. Well, we have explored the Shador Sanders topic. We have a couple of other topics that we want to discuss. One of them is the status of Kevin Stefanski, who's getting a lot of criticism in the press. I am now firmly on Team Stefanski. I have to be honest with you. And I'm on Team Stefanski because Skip Bayless is on Fire Stefanski. And I know it always to do the opposite of what Skip Bayless says. But James Porsche wants to know, if he's fired after week 18, then what y'all will say?
6 weeks.
So I guess the question.
I mean, the record, it's 6 and whatever it is. I mean, like I've said all along, and like people want to pretend I don't. Like the record is what it is. Like you don't have to make a stronger case than that. You can just point to that and go, he's fired, and you're completely justified. And you can also point to, Kevin Stefanski is in a prison because of the Deshaun Watson contract and situation. The problem is he was one of the architects of it. So
yep.
I can blame Jimmy Haslam for, I can say that Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski made their pitch and it failed. And if they just left it at that, Deshaun Watson never comes to Cleveland and move on. Now, the owner obviously got too competitive for his own good, guaranteed the whole contract, and we are where we are. Nevertheless, Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry said, we want this guy. So they designed the prison they are now in. So those two factors alone, you can easily justify firing him. And if that's the case, then so be it. Then the challenge is, can you replace him? Because you sit here and you go, oh, of course, anyone could replace Kevin Stefanski. Well, I've seen who this team has hired since Jimmy Haslam's been in charge, and no, they can't. Not only that, the field of candidates that's being thrown out there is incredibly underwhelming. I really like Robert Saleh as a coach, but his high watermark with the Jets was 7 wins. I've heard people throw the name Josh McDaniels out here, which makes me want to throw up on camera. I've seen people throw out the name Mike McCarthy, who would be in his 3rd stint at this point. Like the options people are throwing out there suck. They're awful, and they are.
Give me Tommy Reese the job.
So then you're sitting there. Well, I want Clint Kupiak. I can't pick that man out of a lineup. I think he's doing a heck of a job with Seattle Seahawks, but I have no idea if he can be a head coach. And I will say that with any coordinator, I have no idea, because I will have maybe 1 to 5% of the information I could possibly need to make a real judgment on that. But that is like, you're now just saying, throwing a coin to a fountain and making a wish at that point, because you don't have any real info. You're just throwing names out there and hoping they can coach. So if you look at those situations and you sit there and go, well, are we better off with trying something else? Perhaps. Maybe they'll get really lucky. The problem is they may have already gotten really lucky. And granted, Kevin Stefanski has made his mistakes and could end up losing his job because of them. But if you're sitting here and you're going, Kevin Stefanski leaned to these rookies, that Andrew Berry got him, and he's getting them to play. Like there's becoming a theory that the rookies are basically self-taught. Harold Fannin isn't being coached. He just showed up and is great. And Quinshon Judkins, same deal, just showed up and he's great. And Mason Graham and Carson Schwarzenegger and the Browns were so good at the draft. These guys don't need any coaching. And now Shador Sanders is part of this mix. And look, the Browns did a really good job of identifying the right players for this team. And it seems to be going really, really well. And first and foremost, any player development the credit starts with the player. Coaches help, but players got to do the actual work. Nevertheless, somebody is in the building telling these kids what to do, and it's going really, really well. Record is what it is. And again, that could cost Kevin Stefanski his job, and you can be completely justified with that opinion. But when you're talking about Harold Fannin with over 600 receiving yards, and now is quietly entering the offensive rookie of the year conversation, when Quinshon Judkins was already sort of in the rookie of the year conversation. Dylan Sampson looks really good lately despite the fumble. You just keep adding names to the list over and over and over of rookies you really like on this team. Somebody is in the building telling these guys what to do, unless you really want to believe that these guys are just showing up and just doing it themselves. I don't think any of those guys in there are going to make such a claim. And if they could, like if that was the thing, then coaching would be irrelevant. Clearly something's working. And not only that, the part of this where you have to give Stefanski credit is he didn't do what so many other coaches did. He didn't hide from his rookies. He didn't put Jerome Ford out there and say, well, we've got to let Quinshon Judkins figure it out the way a certain coach did with Nick Chubb sitting there on the bench going 3 for 101 in a football game with 2 touchdowns, and that was his whole day. You didn't have him hide behind Harold Fannin on the bench and go, well, we've got to let him figure this thing out. Kevin Stefanski trusted these guys right from the jump, and it has paid off handsomely for him. And I would wager that those guys believe in Kevin Stefanski for that very reason. They understand what it means to be a rookie and have the head coach come to you in your NFL and go, I've got your back. I believe in you, and I'm going to keep feeding you the ball. I'm going to keep giving you opportunities to make plays. And you're starting to see the confidence grow with these guys. And that's why I find it really interesting. Again, watch that press conference. Shador Sanders has been really wishy-washy with sort of navigating this whole thing because I genuinely don't know what he thinks he's supposed to say when he's asked about this whole stuff and what he knows our reporter is essentially trying to farm drama and has called this out at various points. But you watch the press conference he just had last night, and you sit there and you start to see he's getting a little annoyed with the way that people are discounting the people that are helping him in the building, I think. Now, I could be reading into that. I could be completely wrong. But when he literally said multiple times, are you kidding me? 2 questions that he was asked about various things that are happening, including that 2-point conversion, you start to get the sense that maybe he's taking up for those guys that are coaching him a little bit more than maybe some of these people would like.
When you get to Kevin Stefanski and you talk about should he be fired, the record tells you one huge story. There hasn't been success or any sustained success, especially over the past 30 games. It's been horrendous. So, and Kevin Stefanski, does he deserve to be fired? Get back to me in 4 weeks. Right now, I want to see what this team does in these 4 weeks. The team hasn't quit. They still have fight. Your rookie growth and development that we told you was a plan from day one here early is what they continue to do week in, week out. And it's proven that they can coach. Because there's been far talented players that have walked in this league and weren't coached or weren't coachable that just flamed out. You have guys here that work, that they put the effort in. So when you look at Kevin Stefanski, you can't say that they're not coaching, because the opposite is obvious. They're coaching because they rely on rookies to get them to this point, and that's part of that development process that you always want to see with a rookie. In the case of the Browns, in the case of Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Barry, excuse me, they fast-tracked this thing. Excuse me. They just put all this youth on the field and found a way to incorporate this youth into a system and make it work. Yeah, it's not showing in wins and losses, and it generally doesn't in the first year of doing such. Historically, it doesn't work that way, especially on the scale that this organization has taken. But this is where you start to see the payoff in year 2. Because now these guys will play for that season. They'll get away from the season. That first off season is the biggest time that you see a player, a rookie player of caliber, take that next step. That's historical fact. And this is what you need to see. Now, is that going to be with Stefanski or not? That's a good question. But I'll go back to a question from the beginning of all this. Is how did an organization and a head coach buy into putting all this youth on the field, this inexperience on the field, knowing you were trying to grow and develop? Where does that land for Kevin Stefanski? You have to look. Did he do his job in getting these guys, this team, to that point? Wins and losses, that may be something that they weren't the biggest concern about, because we heard before this season started, going back in the training camp, they just talked about being competitive. We need to grow. We need to be competitive. They've done those things. They're competitive in almost every game until they do something stupid, something that's out of the professional realm of what good teams do. They start making mistakes, and then the wheels start to come off the wagon. So I'm not too sure. I want to see 4 more games of Kevin Stefanski, Tommy Rees, Shador Sanders, and I want to go from there before I have a real solid opinion. Because right now, there's a reason why this team loaded up the way they did, played all this youth, and it just may be because there's a plan behind all that.
Hey, when we started Gang of Three, what was the question that we got every single week that we don't get anymore? Penalties. Penalties. Every week it was, why do the Browns have so many penalties? We're not getting that question anymore.
Where are they at? About the midpoint of the league now?
And yeah, they're dead ass average. They are right dead smack in the middle of the league. Like, when you say they're not coaching, they're not doing this thing, it's weird that nobody's talking about penalties anymore, because clearly it has something that has gotten worked on and improved with this group. Barry, can you highlight the question from Otto Works there, World's Fastest Man?
Let me see if I can find it. Is this what you
Yes.
you wanted?
So he asks about, the rookies look great. Basically, why now? And, is the front office just evolving its process, blah, blah, blah. They're leaps and bounds. I would look, there are teams that get really lucky in the draft early, or front offices get really lucky in the draft early. Obviously, Washington, knocked it out of the park when they had Jaden Daniels and a couple rookies, and that propelled them to the NFC Championship game. But I would tell you that it is an evolution. You have to figure out how to do this. And this is where, and we've seen the Browns make this mistake over and over and over again. And granted, there have been front offices they've hired that just could not do the job. But it's difficult when you can't sort of evaluate what you're doing and figure out what's working and what isn't. Obviously, some of the issue for the Browns is not necessarily identifying athletes. They've done largely a good jobs of that, Siaki Ika not included. But they had to figure out the fit element, and they had to figure out the people element. They are starting to figure out those things. Now, the other part about that, every GM in the league will concede, as smart as they think they are, there is luck. I would look at the 2023 draft as where the Browns were. That's where, to me, it started really hitting the accelerator. It's weird because everybody go, well, they didn't have a first-round pick and all this other stuff. Just in terms of process, and then getting a little bit lucky with some of those picks. Isaiah McGuire in the 4th round was really lucky where you got him. But it was a home run in terms of all the things you want out of a player. Really good athlete, super productive in the SEC, 21 years old, premium position. Like, he hit all the boxes, and he's a good football player, and you got him in round 4. DeJuan Jones, risky proposition based on the person maybe, but his tape was excellent. Like, he was one of the best tackles in that year, and there were real questions, but he tested like an elite athlete. I think people forget about that.
Yeah, he did.
He's such a big person. But 2023 is when it started going in a really good direction. 2024 was a weird draft. I don't think it was very good overall, and we're starting to see some of that, but they still did a pretty good job of that. It's a shame we lost we lost Buki Watson because he was really coming on as a late round pick before camp. And then you're getting Miles Harden, and coming into the season, everybody's going, "Oh my God, what are the Browns going to do about that slot?" And I don't know if Miles Harden is necessarily the answer. I don't know if Miles Harden's going to make a Pro Bowl anytime soon. But we're not asking the question, what on earth are the Browns going to do about slot? You got him in round 7. Like,
what?
Juwan Briggs, which I'm still mad at the Browns for trading Juwan Briggs, was a good football player. Got him in round 7 too. So then you carry this over and you start to figure out what you really need to do to be successful in the draft. And the Browns got lucky. They got lucky that the Jacksonville Jaguars were willing to give them basically everything to trade up to get Travis Hunter. That allowed you to get a sweetheart deal to get 5, 36, and a 1. But to the Browns' credit, they did a really good job with those picks. And I think there's certainly an element. Like, I'll use Howie Roseman as an example. Howie Roseman, who's a former lawyer with no scouting experience, for the people who want to bag on that element, got sucked when he started out with the Philadelphia Eagles. He sucked, and they didn't fire him, but they sort of put him in the back office like that guy in Office Space. When Chip Kelly came into town, And then ultimately Chip Kelly doesn't work out. Howie Roseman sort of earns his way back into good graces, and now he's one of the best executives in football. It takes time to figure out how some of these things work. There are guys that have their strengths. John Dorsey, for example, I despise him, but he was a good scout. He couldn't figure out any of the other stuff. Andrew Berry was a really good contract guy. He was really good with the trades. He was really good at identifying players that were already in the league. Needed to figure out and learn how to really get good at the draft process. One, I think he's gotten better at that in terms of listening to the people around him, hiring the people that are going to best support him, which is certainly an important element. And then all of this has sort of allowed them to now figure it out and get it right. Now, the Browns, even if Andrew Berry is still here, which I assume he will be, they could absolutely screw the pooch in 2026 because that's sort of the nature of the beast. But just the biggest thing for them, from my standpoint, when I look at how these guys do it, and when I write articles and say I project these guys going forward based on process, I can identify the markers that say, good athlete, productive, young age, all these other things, fit. We got a ton of those things. I can't do the people part. I can't do some of the the fit part necessarily in terms of fit locker room and all that other stuff. But the Browns seem to be figuring that part out. So it's a process. It takes time. And this is where you sort of don't. That's what I worry about when you say, oh, well, let's get rid of these guys and just do something else. You may screw this up right when they figured it out and are really about to take off. All the mistakes, intact and everything else. Deshaun Watson and everything else they've done wrong. They've really, really got it right now. And I think there's reason to believe they can continue to get it. Are they going to repeat the 25 draft? Please, I hope so. But that's not realistic. If Shador Sanders said we're going to be talking about this as one of the all-time drafts in recent memory, not just for the Browns, but for teams in the NFL. You're going to talk about this as an all-time class. But just in terms of the Browns, could they have a step back? Are they going to have a bad draft at some point? Yeah. But what you want is strong process and just continue to hammer that over and over and over again because, again, compared to baseball, make really good contact on the ball. Sometimes it's going to go right to a fielder. It's going to be an out. But if you continuously hit the ball hard every time, you're going to get good results and ultimately hit for a really good average.
All right. Let's we've got a couple of hypotheticals in the from the chat that I want to get to, but a bigger issue for me right now is what in the world happened to the run defense. They were one Titans offensive penalty away from giving up over 200 yards on Sunday. They still gave up 161, I think, to Pollard. Is it good play by the, good game plan from the Titans? Have the Titans figured out something about the Browns? Is there a hole in the Browns defense with Malik Collins being out? He was more of a pass rusher by reputation than a run defender. Yeah, I would argue.
He was not a good run defender.
Yeah, exactly. And so he's out. So that's probably not the reason. So I just I'll point this one to you first, Lane. What do you think happened?
Let me point this to you, Barry. What did you see? Where did you see Tennessee attack and eat at in that game running the ball? What did you see?
They seem to be doing a lot of motion, sort of pulling the linebackers away and then going right at Myles Garrett.
Right through the gaping hole, lake-size hole that was created. And they worked it, and worked it. They would double and sometimes triple Garrett to ensure that they took him, one, they game planned him out of the game, and two, to enable those opportunities. They feasted on that. Tennessee did a very good job up front in moving personnel and their scheme block. The Browns did a terrible job in any kind of support. But it all started when you have a hole the size of Menor, Ohio on the offensive line where a capable running back can run.
So, Pete, let me ask you then, if the Browns have been sort of game planned in this particular way, how do they adapt, before they go play the Bills or whoever, to make sure this doesn't happen again?
Well, they have to embrace the fact that they got to stop the run first. Look, I have implored the Browns to be aggressive and figure out what else this defense can do. I get the sense that Jim Schwartz, as much as Myles Garrett, was chasing the record in that game. And that's fine. Like, ultimately, obviously it hurt them, but like, I get it. But it felt both Garrett and Schwartz were so focused on trying to get this statistical achievement, which he had the 1 sack. He's at 20. He had 3 tackles for loss, so he's now at 31. He's 8 away from that record. But it did actually hurt them overall because they were so outmanned, and at times had one backer boxes because they were so lined up on the line of scrimmage and gave themselves no real outs. I think in general, the Browns need to just be like, we've got to take care of the run first and then play the pass when they're going to pass, as opposed to let's try to be super uber aggressive. And look, they saw a rookie quarterback and said, we're going to get after this kid, and he's going to have problems, except that he didn't. He went right down the field the first drive. Now they got him on the second one with the interception, which was a huge play by Devin Bush. Basically kept the Browns in the game initially. But they just kept going and going and going and attacking. And when you couldn't land the first wave, suddenly there was nobody there. On top of that, you were playing on what amounted to be, at least when you were watching the Browns defense at times, looked like an ice rink. Guys struggled with their footing all game. The guy I kept noting who just did not look like himself was Carson Schwarzenegger. It looks like he was ice skating and slipped it all over the place. So I think the biggest thing is the Browns just need to be, I understand the chase for history. I want the record for Myles Garrett as well. I want both of them. I'd love to knock both Watts out of the record book. That would make me very happy. But they have to play sound defense first and let the opportunities come where they will. And if they do that, they're going to get those opportunities, especially if we are in a situation where suddenly the Browns have an offense. Because if the Browns have an offense and play sound defense, now the other team's going to have to throw. And Myles Garrett,
be who you are, and the records will take care of themselves.
Yep.
You just can't deviate away from who you are and expect to, prosper on game day. And I don't know what you want to call that record chasing show on Sunday. One thinking that 3 or 4 sacks, we should just give up the house to try to achieve that. Everybody in that locker room wants to see Garrett achieve that record, but don't change who you are to gain it, because you have ample opportunities. They've proven that the ability to get to the quarterback, proven the ability to slow to run the game down. So don't deviate away from who you are to try to achieve those accolades, because it's just going to be a negative for you in the long run in the scope of how this game is played. And that was yesterday against a team that they shouldn't have been run over, and they were. And that's not a derogatory comment or thought towards the Tennessee Titans, but that's just not who they are. And right. You let them be that team. You enabled and provided those opportunities. So be who you are and play the game. And I think that's going to be a lesson that you'll see come Sunday, that it's going to be a little less of this go for broke and hope to God somebody falls down and somebody touches them before they get up and run 80 yards. But that's my spiel on it.
All right. Fair enough. A couple of hypotheticals from the chat room that I'll share with you guys. Hypothetical question number 1 comes from DeAndre Black. He asks, if Sanders plays well and we still get the number 1 picks, do you trade the pick? And from the Grand John G, similar question. Let's say Sanders shows enough. Do you try to make another trade like the Jacks trade, build the O and pivot to the 2027 QB class? Let's go to you first, Pete.
I mean, it's a big if. Personally, I'm going to take the quarterback regardless, unless somebody's going to be offering me basically their firstborn and soul worth of draft capital to move off of the pick. You're going to have to get such a massive return, because the Browns can't pass up an opportunity to get what could be a great quarterback. This team doesn't get enough of those opportunities. They can't just say, we're going to pass. This is not a situation where you're sitting there looking at Mitch Trubisky versus Myles Garrett. Like, that was a situation where even though some wanted to take Trubisky, it was clear where they had to go. Having said that, if the Browns find themselves out of position, I would absolutely look, let's say right now they're at 4. If I could ransom off Arvell Reese or Caleb Downs to somebody and move down a few spots and get a nice little haul, hopefully of 2027 draft assets, and then take a Carnell Tate, sign me up. I'm absolutely on board with that type of scenario, but it's just virtually impossible for me to get to a point where I'm going to sit here and actually tell the Browns, if there's a really good quarterback, if he's just sitting there, Fernando Mendoza, and everybody thinks he's better than Cam Ward was last year, who the Browns loved, and you're going to – I can't in good conscience be like, no, go ahead and pass. It's just unrealistic. Again, I would hate to be in a world where the Browns had too many good quarterbacks, but I'm willing to endure it.
Any thoughts, Lane?
Yeah, actually I do, believe it or not. When we're talking about the quarterbacks, I'm methodical in my process. I don't watch and talk about them on emotion because I'm not emotionally invested in any of these guys in college or in Cleveland or anywhere else. That time's going to come for me after we get through this college season and these games. I dig deep in these guys who come out who I believe that are guys that can play and compete at this level. So while everybody is going to scream and wave every flag for Fernando Mendoza, and he's had a great year, there's a kid in Oregon who is awfully talented too, and this kid can play. And those are the only two that I would even remotely consider in that conversation. The thing is I need to see what this team and what this quarterback here does for these next 4 weeks.
Sure.
And I want to see where his matching quality of physicals and how he's improving on all those other intangibles and the mentals of the game. Where does that put him in line with what's out there and what's available? Because right now I think it's a little too early to just say, no, Sanders isn't good enough. Or, no, Mendoza's, the next Joe Burrow, which I don't believe. More really intrigues the shit out of me. And there's a kid at Cincinnati that just bothers me. So when I look at these guys, I need to see a lot more, and I do a lot more work into it. And that's why I was so keen on one kid last year who got an opportunity and just doesn't know how to protect himself. So no, right now I have no commitment and thought whatsoever as what the Browns should do if they had the top pick. And everybody wants a quarterback. Shit, I want them to have a quarterback. They want to have a quarterback, but I need to see it on my own and break it all down to see if that's really the guy or the position that's going to help you the most, because I love accumulating high draft picks, especially when I can start filling up a deficient roster. And if I got a quarterback who can play this game. So this is a weeks down the road type of thing for us to start talking about.
Well, we will be back, in weeks ahead to talk about it. One last question. Heard a lot of opinion from you guys and from fans about whether Stefanski should be safe. What's your opinion if Shador looks like the answer and they still lose out or only win one more game? Is that enough to change your opinion on Kevin Stefanski, starting with you, Pete?
If Shador Sanders looks like he's the answer, again, are you coming up with the idea that he's self-taught? Somebody is helping him get there, and the thing you don't want to then risk is, one, you fire him, and then you get a whole bunch of coaches like, I don't want to deal with that. And I've talked about this. I think this is an underplayed aspect of Kevin Stefanski is a really good coach for Shador Sanders, because he's really good at ignoring all the crap, all the noise, all the other stuff. He doesn't let it bother him. He doesn't let it get into the locker room and impact the players, in particular Shador Sanders. He lets Shador Sanders be a player, and which is what he needs. He needs to be a player. He needs not to just be a legend's son, a celebrity, and all this other crap. He needs to be a football player and a quarterback, which I think has been great for him. But if Kevin Stefanski, and obviously you'd have to ask Shador about this to a certain extent and sort of get his feedback on this, but if Shador Sanders goes, why on earth would you fire this guy? I think he's done all this stuff for me, and you want to give me another coach who, again, there may be coaches who don't want to deal with him. There may be coaches who come up and screw him up. That's the other part about this. Again, even if you don't want to give the coaching staff credit, a major part of coaching, even when you have really good football players, is not screwing it up. I underplayed part of this. Like you get into college and you get high school and all this other stuff, and you get these 5-star recruits. How many 5-star recruits don't amount to much? So much of it is just don't screw it up. At least right now, if the scenario plays out you just laid out, Kevin Stefanski has at the very least not screwed it up, and potentially has done him real good, at real benefit as his coach. And at that point, I would say I'm going to ride with the guy who helped him get him here and not mess around with it.
Any further thoughts, Lane?
All you can hope is that number 12 balls out. And, personally, you'd like to win every game. And if they don't win a game, I'm not going to lose any sleep over that. And I don't think it's going to affect what the Browns do in their decision-making process with the head coach and general manager, unless the wheels just completely fall off the wagon and they're an embarrassment. So I don't think any of that's going to matter. I think what they're going to do, they already have an idea of what they're going to do, and they just hope Shador Sanders just completely keeps on the trajectory and shows them that he could be that guy.
Right. And I see comments every once in a while that the OBR as a group, and we're a bunch of individuals and we all have different opinions, right? Is, for some reason backing the regime or, backing Stefanski or Barry. Let me tell you something. The best thing that could happen to my business, the OBR, is if they replace the coach and the GM. I mean, traffic explodes, subscriptions explode. It's a bonanza for media sites. We have no reason to just back the administration or regime. We're just giving you our opinions. In fact, if we wanted attention, we'd be out there yelling, fire Stefanski today, like you hear on talk radio. So
every other web show.
And other shows.
I want to address something here. There's a question here saying anyone saying Mendoza isn't good enough hasn't watched any games or film, period. Let me clarify this. Nobody has said that Mendoza isn't good enough. Okay, nobody. All we said was, or I said, and I'll speak for myself, is that it's a methodical process and you just don't jump in the quarterbacks. You take the time to figure out what works. What made him so special now at Indiana that it wasn't at Cal? Coaching? I mean, you got to look at all these things. Nobody's saying the guy can't play. And as far as watching games or film, dude, I watch more football than probably 90% of these people out here because I don't sleep. So football's always on my television. Okay, so, if you're going to ask something or have something to say, just ask the question and get it. And get your answer. Get your reply. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to agree with us. I don't care. But don't blindly say things like that because we take it all the time. So, that's the end of my rant.
All right.
Great show. Glad you were here. Please come back for more next week because we can make it great.
All right. Very good. Well, you did my close for me. Thanks for everyone for attending and for all your questions. Even if it seemed like we disagree with the tenet of your question, we're glad that you're here and we're glad to hear from you. And it's really the chat and the people who respond who make this just a heck of a lot of fun for us every Monday night. So we will be back next Monday at 7:15 for more Gang of Three. Thanks a lot for coming. For Pete, for Lane, I'm Barry. We'll see you next week.